Adrian Brooks never wanted to be noticed. For 3 years, he had made himself invisible in the tower where Chicago's most powerful woman commanded an empire. One glance, one conversation, one moment of visibility could cost him everything. But on the night the elevator failed and he found himself alone with CEO Claire Whitmore in the emergency lighting, his daughter's safety hanging on his silence, he realized some things cannot stay hidden forever. If you want to know how a single father who cleans floors after midnight became the one person a billionaire CEO couldn't stop thinking about, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The 23rd floor was always coldest. Adrian Brooks felt it the moment the elevator doors opened, that particular bite of recirculated air that told him the vents up here ran harder than anywhere else in the building. He pulled his maintenance card out carefully, making sure the wheels didn't squeak against the polished marble. 11:40 at night. The executive suite was supposed to be empty by now. He checked his watch again. 11:42. If he moved efficiently, he could finish the whole floor in 90 minutes and be home before Ella woke up from one of her nightmares. Mrs. Chen next door was good about staying late, but Adrian hated pushing it past 1:30. The old woman had her own life. He'd already asked too much. The hallway stretched ahead of him, floor-to-ceiling windows on one side showing the Chicago skyline in winter darkness, executive offices on the other. Adrian had cleaned this floor 60 times, maybe more. He knew which conference room door stuck, which bathroom faucet dripped, which office belonged to which vice president based purely on the family photos arranged on their desks. He also knew which office to avoid entirely. The corner suite. The one with frosted glass doors and the name Claire Whitmore etched in steel letters, CEO. 30 years old and already running the whole operation. Adrian had seen her exactly 4 times in 3 years, always from a distance, always when he was emptying trash or replacing paper towels in the bathrooms. Each time he'd made sure she never noticed him. He kept his head down, his movements quick and quiet, his existence deliberately forgettable. That was the deal he'd made with himself when he took this job. Be invisible. Don't make friends. Don't draw attention. Just work. Get paid. Go home to Ella. Everything else was risk he couldn't afford. Adrian started with the conference rooms, working methodically. Vacuum the carpets. Wipe down the tables. Clean the whiteboards. Check the trash. His hands moved through the routine while his mind stayed partly somewhere else, the way it always did during these shifts. Wondering if Ella had eaten all her dinner, if she'd remembered to brush her teeth, if Mrs. Chen had read her the story about the rabbit, or if Ella had insisted on the one about the train again. 4 years old and already so damn particular about everything. He smiled despite himself, pushing the cart toward the next room. The thought of her was the only thing that made these midnight shifts bearable. Her laugh, her questions, the way she held onto his hand when they crossed the street like he was the only solid thing in the world, because for her, he was. Her mother had made that clear 3 years ago when she'd left a note on the kitchen counter and disappeared. No forwarding address, no contact information, just 12 words that Adrian still remembered perfectly. I can't do this anymore. She's better off with you. I'm sorry. At first he'd been angry, then terrified, then something else entirely, grimly, quietly determined. If Ella only had one parent, then that parent was going to be enough. He'd figure it out. He'd make it work. He'd build a life that kept her safe and fed and loved, even if it meant working overnight maintenance in a building full of people who would never know his name, even if it meant making himself invisible. Adrian finished the east wing and moved toward the center of the floor. The executive assistant's desks were neat, barely disturbed. He emptied the small trash bins, wiped down the surfaces, straightened the chairs. Through the windows, the city glittered. Lights in buildings that never fully slept. People working late or starting early, all of them part of the same machine. He was almost to the west wing when he noticed the light. The corner office. Claire Whitmore's suite. The frosted glass was glowing from within, soft and amber, which meant someone was still inside. Adrian stopped. His first instinct was to skip it entirely. Come back tomorrow night when the office was properly empty. But his supervisor had been clear last week. The CEO's suite needed to be cleaned nightly, no exceptions. Something about an inspection, corporate standards, quarterly reviews. Adrian hadn't paid much attention to the details. He just knew that if he skipped the corner office tonight, There'd be questions tomorrow. Questions meant visibility. Visibility meant risk. He checked his watch, 11:58. Maybe she was just finishing up. Maybe if he waited 10 minutes, she'd leave and he could slip in after. He parked his cart near the assistants' desks and pulled out his phone, pretending to check messages while actually just watching the frosted glass for movement. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The light stayed on. Adrian felt the tension building in his shoulders. He needed to get this done. Needed to get home. Needed to not be standing in this hallway when Claire Whitmore finally emerged from her office, because the last thing he could afford was a conversation with the woman who controlled his employment. He made a decision. He'd knock quietly. If she answered, he'd apologize and come back later. If she didn't answer, maybe she'd just left the light on by accident and he could clean quickly and be gone before she returned. Adrian approached the frosted glass doors and raised his hand. He knocked. 3 soft taps. No response. He waited, counting to 10 in his head. Still nothing. Carefully, he tried the handle. Unlocked. He eased the door open just enough to look inside. The office was massive. Minimalist furniture, dark wood, a desk the size of his apartment's kitchen. But what caught his attention was the woman standing at the window with her back to him, phone pressed to her ear, silhouetted against the city lights. Claire Whitmore. Even from behind, even in the low light, she had a presence that made the air feel heavier. Tailored suit, dark hair pulled back, the kind of posture that suggested she'd never slouched in her life. She was talking in a low-clipped voice that carried the particular edge of someone who is done being patient. I don't care what the projections say, Michael. The numbers don't work. We're not moving forward until they do. Adrian started to back out, but his cart was blocking the door, and when he tried to pull it aside quietly, one of the wheels caught on the door frame with a sharp metallic scrape. Claire turned. For exactly 3 seconds, they looked at each other. She had the kind of face that belonged in business magazines. Sharp cheekbones, pale skin, dark eyes that seemed to calculate 6 things at once. Beautiful in a way that felt deliberately constructed, like every element had been chosen for maximum impact. She looked at Adrian the way someone might look at an unexpected obstacle, not with anger exactly, but with a cool assessment that made his stomach tighten. "I'll call you back," she said into the phone, and ended the call without waiting for a response. The silence that followed felt enormous. "I'm sorry," Adrian said quickly. "I thought the office was empty. I can come back later. Your maintenance." It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." "It's midnight." "Yes, ma'am. I work the overnight shift." Claire studied him for another moment, and Adrian had the deeply uncomfortable feeling of being seen in a way he'd spent 3 years trying to avoid. Not looked at, seen, like she was cataloging details. The way he stood, the worn company uniform, the maintenance cart, him. "What's your name?" The question landed like a small stone in still water. Adrian hesitated. Giving his name felt like crossing a line he'd promised himself he'd never cross. But refusing to answer would be worse, would be memorable. "Adrian Brooks, ma'am." "You've worked here long?" 3 years. "I've never seen you before." "I work nights. We don't usually cross paths." Something flickered in her expression, too fast for him to read. "Well, Adrian Brooks, I need another 20 minutes. You can clean now or come back later. Your choice." It wasn't really a choice. They both knew that. But the fact that she'd offered it anyway felt like something, though Adrian wasn't sure what. "I can come back," he said. "No?" She waved a hand, dismissive. "I don't want to keep you late. I'll stay out of your way." She moved to her desk and sat down, pulling a laptop toward her like he'd already ceased to exist. But Adrian could feel her awareness of him as he carefully rolled his cart into the office and began working. He started with the trash bins, moving quickly and quietly, trying to make himself as small as possible. The office smelled like expensive furniture and cold air, abstract art on the walls, a few books on the shelf, mostly business theory and economic policy. No personal photos, no plants, nothing soft. Adrian worked in silence, hyper-aware of every sound he made. The whisper of the trash bag, the soft spray of cleaning solution, his own breathing. "Do you have family, Adrian?" The question came out of nowhere, and he nearly dropped the bottle he was holding. "Ma'am?" Claire didn't look up from her screen. Family, do you have any? A daughter. Now she looked up. How old? 4. And you're working midnight shifts. It wasn't quite a question, but it felt like one anyway. Adrian focused on wiping down the windowsill, keeping his voice neutral. It pays better than day shifts. Childcare is expensive. Her mother? Not in the picture. He didn't elaborate, didn't explain. Claire Whitmore didn't need his life story, and he sure as hell wasn't going to volunteer it. But when he glanced toward the desk, she was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite parse. Not pity. Something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. That's difficult, she said quietly. We manage. I'm sure you do. The conversation died there, and Adrian was grateful for it. He finished the windows and moved to vacuum the carpet, the noise filling the silence in a way that felt safer than talking. When he was done, he emptied the small recycling bin near her desk and headed for the door. Adrian? He stopped, hand on the cart handle. Claire was still sitting at her desk, laptop open in front of her, but she wasn't looking at the screen anymore. She was looking at him. Thank you for your work, she said. I know it's not easy keeping this place running. The words were simple, professional, probably something she'd say to anyone, but there was a weight to them that made Adrian uneasy, like they meant more than they should. Just doing my job, ma'am. Still, it matters. He nodded once and left before she could say anything else. Out in the hallway, Adrian stood by his cart and let out a long breath. His hands were shaking slightly. He gripped the cart handle until they steadied. 3 years. 3 years of invisibility, and it had taken less than 10 minutes to shatter it. She knew his name now, knew he had a daughter, knew he worked nights. Those were small details, probably meaningless to someone like Claire Whitmore, but to Adrian they felt like cracks in the wall he'd built between his work life and his real life. He checked his watch, 12:40. He needed to finish the floor and get home. Adrian pushed the cart toward the remaining offices and forced himself to focus. This didn't change anything. One conversation didn't mean anything. By tomorrow, Claire Whitmore would forget his name, forget his face, forget that he existed at all. That was how it worked when you were invisible. That was how it had to work. The next 3 nights passed without incident. Adrian cleaned the 23rd floor during his usual shift, and the corner office stayed dark. No lights, no late-night meetings, no unexpected encounters. He told himself he was relieved. He almost believed it. On the 4th night, he was cleaning the 18th floor when his supervisor called. Brooks, I need you on 23 tonight. Adrian frowned. I did 23 2 nights ago. Yeah, we'll do it again. Special request from upstairs. Make sure the executive suite is spotless. They're doing walkthroughs tomorrow for some investor meeting. Got it. He hung up and stared at his phone for a moment. Special request from upstairs. That could mean anything. Probably meant nothing. He was reading into things that weren't there. Adrian took the elevator up at 11:30 and started his routine. Conference rooms first. Break room. Bathrooms. Executive assistant's area. Everything exactly the way he always did it. When he reached the corner office, the light was on again. He stood outside the frosted glass doors and felt that same tightness in his chest. He could skip it, tell his supervisor the office was occupied, come back tomorrow. But he'd already been given direct instructions. Make sure the executive suite is spotless. Adrian knocked. Come in. Her voice was clear through the glass. He opened the door. Claire was sitting on the long leather couch near the window, papers spread across the coffee table in front of her. She'd taken off her suit jacket. Her sleeves were rolled up. She looked tired in a way that seemed almost human. Adrian? She said, and the fact that she remembered his name sent a small shock through him. You're back. Yes, ma'am. Supervisor said the floor needs to be ready for a walkthrough tomorrow. Ah, right, the investors. She gestured vaguely at the office. Go ahead, I'll stay out of your way. But she didn't. As Adrian worked, she kept talking, small comments, observations. Nothing that required more than a one-word answer, but enough to make silence impossible. How's your daughter? She's good. What's her name? Ella. Pretty name. Thank you. Does she look like you? Adrian paused in the middle of emptying the trash bin. I don't know, Maybe. People say she has my eyes. What color are your eyes, Adrian? The question was so unexpected that he actually looked at her. She was watching him from the couch, papers forgotten, her expression unreadable. Brown, he said. So are mine. Half the world has brown eyes. It's not very distinctive. I guess not. But people still notice. Isn't that strange? How we assign meaning to the most ordinary things. Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. He finished with the trash and moved to the windows, focusing on the glass, the city lights beyond, anything except the woman watching him work. Do you like this job? Claire asked. It pays the bills. That's not what I asked. He stopped wiping and looked at her again. Does it matter if I like it? It might. Why? Claire stood up, smoothing her shirt, and walked toward the window. For a moment she stood next to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. She looked out at the city. I've worked in this building for 8 years, she said quietly. Started as an analyst. Worked my way up. I know the names of every executive, every department head, every senior manager, but I don't know the people who keep the lights on, who clean the floors, who make sure the building actually functions. She glanced at him. That feels like something I should fix. You don't need to know us, Adrian said. We're just doing our jobs. Everyone's just doing their job. That doesn't mean I shouldn't notice. There was something in her voice that made Adrian uneasy. Not hostile, not cruel, something else. Something lonely. He went back to cleaning, moving quickly, trying to finish before this conversation went somewhere he couldn't follow. You're very good at that, Claire observed. At what? Making yourself invisible. His hand stilled on the window. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. She turned to face him fully. You move like you don't want to be seen, like you're trying to take up as little space as possible. I've been watching you work for 20 minutes, and you haven't looked directly at me once. I'm trying to be professional. No, you're trying to disappear. The accuracy of it hit harder than it should have. Adrian set down the cleaning cloth and finally looked at her properly. She was standing 3 feet away, arms crossed, studying him with that same calculating expression she'd had the first night. With respect, ma'am, I need to finish this floor and get home to my daughter. If there's something wrong with my work, there's nothing wrong with your work. Then what do you want from me? The question came out sharper than he'd intended. Claire's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't look offended. If anything, she looked pleased. Honesty, she said. I want you to stop acting like talking to me is some kind of threat. Isn't it? Why would it be? Adrian almost laughed. You're the CEO. I'm maintenance. If people see us talking, they're going to make assumptions. And those assumptions could cost me this job. I would never fire you for having a conversation with me. Maybe not. But someone else might decide I'm getting too comfortable. Overstepping. They might suggest you don't need that kind of distraction. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked back to the couch and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. You're right, she said. I hadn't thought about it that way. I'm sorry. The apology caught him completely off guard. Adrian stood there with the cleaning cloth in his hand, unsure how to respond. It's fine, he said finally. It's not. You're trying to protect yourself, and I'm making that harder. She looked down at her hands. I don't have many people I can talk to. Everyone here wants something from me. A promotion. A favor. Access. You're the first person in 3 years who seems like they'd rather I left them alone. I just want to do my job and go home. I know. That's what makes you interesting. Adrian shook his head slowly. I'm not interesting. I'm tired. I'm broke. I'm trying to raise a kid on overnight maintenance wages. There's nothing interesting about that. There is to me. The way she said it made something twist in his chest. Not attraction exactly, something more complicated. The recognition of another person who understood what it meant to be lonely in a room full of people. But he couldn't afford to feel that, couldn't afford to care. I need to finish, he said quietly. Claire nodded. Of course. She went back to her papers, and Adrian finished cleaning in silence. When he was done, he pushed his cart toward the door without saying goodbye. Adrian. He stopped, but didn't turn around. Thank you, Claire said, for talking to me, even when you didn't want to. He left without answering. Ella was having a bad night. Adrian got home at 1:45 to find Mrs. Chen sitting in his kitchen looking exhausted. Ella was finally asleep on the couch, her small body curled under a blanket, her face blotchy from crying. "She had a nightmare," Mrs. Chen explained in her quiet, accented English. "Asked for you. I tried to help, but—" "It's okay," Adrian said quickly. "Thank you for staying. I'm sorry I was late." "Not late, just hard for little ones." She patted his arm and gathered her things. "She'll be fine in the morning." After she left, Adrian sat on the edge of the couch and watched Ella sleep. Her breath came in soft, uneven pulls. Her fingers clutched the edge of the blanket like she was holding on to something in her dreams. 4 years old and already so familiar with fear. He thought about what Claire had said. Everyone's just doing their job. That doesn't mean I shouldn't notice, but being noticed was dangerous. It created connections, expectations, complications. It made you visible, and visibility meant vulnerability. Adrian had learned that the hard way. When Ella's mother left, he'd tried reaching out to family, to friends, to anyone who might help. And what he'd learned was that people who promised to be there usually weren't. That asking for help made you a burden. That the only person he could really count on was himself. So he'd stopped asking, stopped expecting, stopped letting anyone close enough to see how hard it really was. He'd made himself invisible, and it had worked. For 3 years it had worked. But now there was a woman on the 23rd floor who kept asking questions, who remembered his name, who looked at him like she actually saw something worth noticing, and that terrified him more than anything. Ella stirred in her sleep, and Adrian reached out to smooth her hair back from her forehead. She relaxed at his touch, her breathing evening out. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here. I'm always here." It was the only promise he knew he could keep. He didn't see Claire again for a week. His supervisor moved him to different floors, different buildings in the company's downtown portfolio. Adrian told himself he was relieved, told himself the distance was good, necessary. But when he was reassigned to the main tower on a Friday night, he felt something in his chest tighten. He cleaned the 23rd floor carefully, methodically, the way he always did. The corner office was dark. He finished his work and was heading toward the elevator when he heard voices. 2 executives, men in their 50s, ties loosened, walking toward the elevator from the opposite direction. They were talking quietly, but sound carried in the empty hallway. "Getting too involved with the staff," one of them was saying. "It's inappropriate." "Who? Whitmore? Who else? I heard she's been having conversations with the maintenance crew, late at night, in her office." The other man laughed. "What, you think Claire's slumming it with the janitors? Come on. I'm not saying anything's happening. I'm saying it looks bad. She needs to be more careful about appearances. She's 30 years old and running a billion-dollar company. I think she knows how to manage her reputation." "Does she? Because from where I'm standing, she's got a blind spot. Smart as hell, but no common sense when it comes to people." They reached the elevator and pressed the button. Adrian had stopped walking, standing frozen near his cart, hoping they wouldn't notice him in the shadows. The elevator arrived. The men stepped in. "Just saying," the first man continued as the doors started to close. "If she's not careful, someone's going to take advantage, and then we'll all have a mess to clean up." The doors shut. Adrian stood in the empty hallway, his heart pounding. They'd been talking about him. Not by name, maybe they didn't even know his name, but they'd noticed. Somehow, people had noticed. And if 2 random executives were already gossiping about it, how long before everyone knew? How long before his supervisor started asking questions? How long before someone decided Adrian Brooks was a problem that needed to be solved? He thought about Ella, about the rent due next week, about the careful, fragile life he'd built. And he made a decision. He'd avoid the 23rd floor, request reassignment permanently. If anyone asked, he'd say the schedule worked better, no drama, no explanations, just disappear back into the background where he belonged. It was the only way to keep everything safe. The elevator broke down on a Tuesday. Adrian was on the 19th floor finishing the executive bathrooms when the building's emergency alert system crackled to life. "Attention, we are experiencing a temporary elevator malfunction on floors 20 through 25. Please use the stairs. Maintenance has been notified. We apologize for the inconvenience." Adrian frowned. Elevator malfunctions weren't uncommon in buildings this old, but they usually got fixed quickly. He made a note to check with his supervisor later and went back to work. 20 minutes later, his radio buzzed. "Brooks, you there?" He pulled the radio from his belt. "Yeah, I'm here. We got a situation on 23. Someone stuck in elevator 4. Need you to head up there." Adrian's stomach dropped. "I'm not certified for elevator rescue." "We know. Fire department's on the way. But building security wants someone up there now to make contact. Keep whoever's inside calm until the professionals arrive. You're the closest." "Who's stuck?" There was a pause. CEO's office called it in, so I'm guessing someone important. "Get up there. Now." The radio went dead. Adrian stood there for 5 full seconds, already knowing who was in that elevator, already knowing this was going to be a problem. But he couldn't ignore a direct order. He took the stairs to 23, pushing through the heavy fire door into the hallway. The floor was mostly dark, just emergency lighting casting everything in pale blue. He could see elevator 4 at the end of the corridor, its indicator lights dead. As he got closer, he heard a voice from inside. Calm, controlled, annoyed. "Don't care what the estimated time is. I need to know the actual time. Yes, I understand it's an emergency. Yes, I'll wait." Adrian approached the elevator doors and knocked gently. The voice inside stopped. "Hello?" Claire called out. "Ms. Whitmore? It's Adrian Brooks. Building maintenance. Fire department's on the way. I'm here to make sure you're okay until they arrive." Silence. Then, "Adrian?" "Yes, ma'am." "Well, this is embarrassing." Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. "Are you hurt?" "No, just trapped in a metal box. How long until someone gets me out?" 30 minutes, maybe less. Are you claustrophobic? Do you need anything?" "I'm fine, just frustrated." A pause. "Can you stay until they arrive?" Adrian looked around the empty hallway. The smart thing to do was say no. Wait by the stairs. Keep distance. Maintain the boundaries he'd decided to rebuild. But she was stuck in an elevator, and she'd asked him to stay. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I can stay." He sat down on the floor, his back against the wall opposite the elevator doors. Through the crack beneath them, he could see a thin line of light. "Thank you," Claire said. Her voice sounded different through the metal, smaller somehow. "Just doing my job." "Still." They sat in silence for a while. Adrian could hear her moving around inside, the rustle of fabric, the click of heels, pacing, probably. "What are you doing here this late?" he asked, surprising himself. "Working. What else? It's almost midnight." "Is it?" She sounded genuinely surprised. "I lose track of time sometimes." "You do that a lot? Work late?" "Every night, don't you?" "I don't have a choice. You do." "Do I?" There was something sharp in her voice. "You think running a company gives me more freedom?" "It gives you more money." "Money doesn't buy time, Adrian. It just changes what you sacrifice to get it." He thought about that. About Ella asleep at home. About Mrs. Chen sitting in his kitchen. About the choice between being present and being solvent. "Yeah, he said, "I guess it does." More silence. Then Claire spoke again, quieter this time. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you stop talking to me?" Adrian closed his eyes. "What do you mean?" "You requested reassignment. I haven't seen you on this floor in over a week, and when I asked building services about it, they said you'd specifically requested not to work the executive suite anymore. I thought it was better. Better for who? Both of us." "I didn't ask for better, Adrian. I asked for honest." He let out a long breath. "I heard people talking, executives. They were gossiping about you having conversations with maintenance staff, about how it looked inappropriate. And I realized that if people were already noticing, it was only going to get worse, so I removed myself from the situation." The silence that followed was heavier than before. "You were protecting me," Claire said finally. "I was protecting my job." "Same thing, in your mind." "Yeah, it is." He heard her slide down to sit on the floor of the elevator. Through the crack, he could see the shadow of her feet. I hate this, she said quietly. Being stuck in an elevator? Being someone people gossip about. Having every conversation analyzed, every decision questioned, every moment of genuine human connection treated like a scandal waiting to happen. Her voice was tight. Do you know what it's like to spend every day surrounded by hundreds of people and not be able to trust a single one of them? No, Adrian admitted, but I know what it's like to be so afraid of losing what you have that you stop trying to have anything else. Is that what you're doing? Every day. For your daughter. For my daughter. Claire was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't have anyone, Adrian. No family I talk to, no real friends, no partner. Just work. Just numbers and meetings and decisions that affect thousands of lives. And I'm good at it. I know I'm good at it. But some nights I sit in that office and wonder what the hell I'm doing, what all of this is even for. Adrian pressed his palm against the elevator door. On the other side, inches away, Claire was sitting in the dark with the same loneliness he'd been carrying for 3 years. You asked me if I liked my job, he said. The truth is, I hate it. I hate working nights. I hate missing bedtime stories. I hate that my daughter wakes up scared and I'm not there. But I do it because it's what keeps her safe, and that matters more than whether I like it. That's love, Claire said softly. Yeah, I guess it is. I don't have that. I don't have anything I love more than my own comfort. That's not true. How would you know? Because if it was true, you wouldn't be here at midnight working on something that could wait until morning. You wouldn't care enough to stay. Through the crack, he saw her shadow shift. Maybe I just don't have anywhere else to be, she said. Maybe, but I don't think that's it. Before Claire could respond, the sound of heavy boots echoed down the hallway. The fire department had arrived. Adrian stood up as 3 firefighters in full gear approached, pulling equipment. Maintenance? One of them asked. Yeah, she's in there. She's okay. Good. We'll have her out in 10 minutes. You can clear out. But Adrian didn't leave. He stayed against the wall, watching as they worked on the elevator doors, watching as the mechanism finally gave way and light spilled out into the hallway. Claire stepped out looking composed, hair still perfect, suit barely wrinkled. The only sign of distress was the tightness around her eyes. She thanked the firefighters professionally, shook their hands, smiled in a way that Adrian now recognized as her public face. Polite, distant, controlled. Then she looked at him. For 3 seconds, she just looked at him, and Adrian saw beneath the polish, saw the exhaustion, the loneliness, the person she'd been when she thought no one could see her. Thank you, she said quietly. Just doing my job. No, you weren't. She glanced at the firefighters, then back at him. Can you stay? Just for a few more minutes? The firefighters were already packing up their gear, and in less than 60 seconds, they'd be alone in the hallway. Adrian knew he should say no, knew he should leave right now before whatever was about to happen actually happened. But he didn't. The firefighters left. The hallway fell quiet. Claire walked slowly toward the windows, her heels clicking against the marble. She stopped and looked out at the city, her reflection ghostly in the glass. I meant what I said in there, she told him. I don't have anyone. You're the CEO of a major company. You have hundreds of employees. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Adrian walked over to stand near her, not beside her, but close enough to continue the conversation without raising their voices. They both stared out at Chicago, at the lights, at the evidence of thousands of other lives being lived in buildings just like this one. Why me? Adrian asked. Why are you talking to me about this? Because you're the only person in this entire building who doesn't want something from me. You'd prefer I left you alone. You said it yourself. She glanced at him. That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in months. That doesn't make us friends. No, but it makes you real. Adrian shook his head slowly. I can't be real with you, Ms. Whitmore. I can't be anything with you except the guy who cleans your office. That's the only version of this that doesn't blow up my life. I understand. Do you? Yes. She turned to face him fully. I understand that you're scared, that you have responsibilities I can't imagine, that every risk feels enormous when you're the only thing standing between your daughter and disaster. Her voice was steady. But I also understand that the walls you've built to protect yourself are the same walls that keep you from having any kind of life beyond survival. The observation hit harder because it was true. Maybe I'm okay with that, Adrian said. Are you? He didn't answer. Claire studied him for another moment, then nodded as if accepting something. I won't push anymore, she said. I won't ask you to stay late. I won't request you specifically for this floor. I'll let you go back to being invisible. She paused. But I want you to know something first. What? You're a good father. You're doing everything right, and your daughter is lucky to have you. The word settled into Adrian's chest and stayed there. How would you know? He asked, his voice rough. Because I can see it, in the way you talk about her, in the way you organize your whole life around her safety, in the way you're willing to sacrifice every single thing you might want for yourself just to make sure she's okay. Claire smiled, sad and small. My father was never like that. I would have given anything to have someone who loved me the way you love her. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. Claire started walking toward her office. At the door, she stopped and looked back. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Miss Whitmore. She disappeared inside, and Adrian stood alone in the hallway, feeling like something fundamental had shifted without his permission. He finished his shift in silence, rode the elevator down in silence, walked to the parking garage in silence. But the whole way home, all he could think about was the look on Claire Whitmore's face when she'd said she didn't have anyone, and how much it had looked like the face he saw in the mirror every single day. Adrian kept his promise to himself for exactly 5 days. He worked floors 8 through 17, avoided the executive suite entirely, and told himself the tightness in his chest had nothing to do with not seeing Claire Whitmore. It was just stress, just exhaustion, just the normal weight of being a single father working overnight maintenance in a city that didn't care whether you survived or drowned. On the 6th day, his supervisor called him into the office. Rick DeMaio was a heavy-set man in his 50s who'd worked building maintenance for 30 years and had the permanent scowl of someone who'd seen every possible way a human being could screw up a simple task. He gestured for Adrian to sit down, then leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed. You avoiding the executive floors? Rick asked. Adrian kept his expression neutral. No, just working where I'm assigned. Right. So it's a coincidence that every time I try to put you back on 23, you suddenly have a scheduling conflict. I haven't said no to any assignment. You've requested trades. 4 times in 1 week. That's saying no without saying no. Rick studied him. You have a problem up there I should know about? No problem. Then why the trades? Adrian weighed his options. He could lie, but Rick had been doing this job long enough to smell bullshit from a mile away. He could tell the truth, but the truth would raise questions he didn't want to answer. I just think it's better if I work other floors, Adrian said carefully. No drama, no complications. Rick's expression didn't change. Someone hassling you? No. Someone making inappropriate comments, because if there's harassment, it's nothing like that. Adrian shifted in his seat. I just prefer working floors where I don't run into executives late at night. It's awkward. They're working, I'm cleaning, and everyone's trying to pretend the other person isn't there. That's the job. I know. So do the job. It wasn't a request. Rick pulled a schedule from his desk and slid it across. Adrian saw his name penciled in for the 23rd floor, Thursday through Sunday night, starting tomorrow. You're good at what you do, Brooks. You're reliable. You don't complain. That's why I'm putting you back on the premium floors. They specifically requested someone detail-oriented. Rick leaned forward. If there's a real problem, tell me now. Otherwise, this conversation is over. Adrian looked at the schedule and saw his carefully constructed distance evaporating. No problem, he said quietly. Good. Get back to work. Adrian left the office feeling like he'd just lost a fight he hadn't realized he was in. Someone had requested him specifically. That could mean building management, could mean the facilities director, could mean anyone, but he knew exactly who it meant. That night, he got home to find Ella sitting at the kitchen table with Mrs. Chen, drawing with crayons. She looked up when he walked in, and her whole face transformed. Daddy? She scrambled off the chair and ran to him, and Adrian caught her in his arms, lifting her up even though his back ached from 8 hours of pushing a maintenance cart. She wrapped her arms around his neck and squeezed hard enough to hurt. "Hey, baby girl, you been good for Mrs. Chen? I drawed you a picture. You drew me a picture. That's what I said." She wriggled out of his arms and ran back to the table, holding up a piece of paper covered in crayon shapes that might have been people, or might have been houses, or might have been nothing at all. "See, it's you and me at the park." Adrian studied the drawing seriously. 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, standing near what was probably supposed to be a swing set. The sky was bright yellow. The grass was purple. "It's beautiful," he said. "You can hang it on the fridge." "I will." Mrs. Chen gathered her coat and bag, smiling at both of them. She ate good dinner, brushed teeth, ready for bed whenever you are. "Thank you, really. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out. You always do." She patted Ella's head and left quietly. Adrian got Ella into her pajamas, read her 2 stories instead of 1 because she gave him the look that always demolished his willpower, and tucked her into bed. She held onto his hand as her eyes drifted closed. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "Are you going to work forever?" The question hit him sideways. "What do you mean?" "You're always working. Even when you're here, you're sleepy because you worked all night." Her voice was small. "I don't like when you're sleepy." Adrian felt something crack inside his chest. He sat on the edge of her bed and brushed hair away from her forehead. "I know. I'm sorry. But I have to work so we can have our house and food and all your toys." "I don't need toys. I just need you not sleepy." "I'll try to be less sleepy, okay?" "Okay." She yawned. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Ella." She fell asleep holding his hand, and Adrian sat there in the dark, listening to her breathe, thinking about Claire Whitmore's words. "The walls you've built to protect yourself are the same walls that keep you from having any kind of life beyond survival." He told himself for 3 years that this was enough, that as long as Ella was safe and fed and loved, nothing else mattered, that he didn't need friends or relationships or any kind of life outside of being her father. But maybe Ella needed more than a father who was too exhausted to be present even when he was home. Maybe he'd been protecting her from the wrong things. Adrian carefully extracted his hand from hers, kissed her forehead, and went to the kitchen. He microwaved leftovers he was too tired to taste, ate standing up at the counter, and stared at Ella's drawing on the fridge. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small. Nobody else in the picture. That was their whole world, and he didn't know if that was enough anymore. Thursday night came too fast. Adrian took the elevator to the 23rd floor at 11:45 and stepped out into the familiar hallway. The lights were on in the corner office. He'd expected that. What he hadn't expected was the small handwritten note taped to his maintenance cart, which someone had left parked by the elevators. He picked it up. The handwriting was precise, controlled, feminine. "Adrian, I know you didn't choose to be back on this floor. I want you to know I didn't request you. Building management did. But I'm not sorry you're here. If you want to talk, I'll be working late. If you don't, I understand. Either way, thank you for doing what you do." See. Adrian read it twice, then folded it and put it in his pocket. He didn't know what to do with the tightness in his throat. He started his routine. Conference rooms, break room, bathrooms. Moving methodically, trying not to think about the light burning in the corner office or the woman sitting inside it. When he finally reached Claire's suite, he knocked. "Come in." She was at her desk, surrounded by files and a laptop showing spreadsheets. She looked up when he entered, and something in her expression softened. "Adrian." "Ms. Whitmore. Did you get my note?" "Yeah." "I meant what I said. I didn't ask for you specifically, but I'm glad you're back." Adrian moved his cart inside and started with the trash. "Your note said building management requested me. Why?" "Because the investor walkthrough went well, and they want to make sure the executive suite stays in the same condition. Apparently you're the most thorough cleaner on staff." "I just do my job." "You do it well. There's a difference." He didn't respond, just kept working, trying to maintain the distance he'd carefully rebuilt over the past week. But Claire wasn't making it easy. "How's Ella?" she asked. "She's good." What is she like? What does a 4-year-old do for fun? Adrian paused in the middle of emptying a recycling bin. Why are you asking? Because I'm curious, because you're the only person I talk to who has a life outside this building, and I'd like to know what that looks like. It looks like bedtime stories and chicken nuggets and trying to explain why she can't wear her princess costume to the grocery store. Claire smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her. Not the polished professional version, something genuine. Does she win the costume argument? Usually, it's hard to say no to that face. I bet it is. Adrian went back to cleaning, but the conversation had shifted something, made the silence feel less heavy. Can I ask you something? Claire said after a while. Sure. What happened to her mother? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Adrian set down the window cleaner and turned to face her. She left when Ella was 1, left a note saying she couldn't do it anymore and disappeared. I haven't heard from her since. That must have been terrifying. It was. For about 6 months, I was barely holding it together, working 2 jobs, trying to figure out childcare, learning how to be a parent by myself. I screwed up constantly, fed her the wrong things, forgot to change diapers, put her clothes on backwards. He shook his head. But we survived. And then we learned how to do better than survive. You make it sound simple. It wasn't. It still isn't. But you figure it out because you don't have a choice. Claire was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. My mother left too. Not physically. She just checked out emotionally when I was 8, decided being a wife and mother wasn't fulfilling enough, and started spending all her time at charity galas and country clubs. My father worked constantly. I raised myself, basically. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me independent, taught me not to rely on anyone. Is that a good thing? Claire looked at him directly. I used to think so. Now I'm not sure. The honesty in her voice made Adrian's chest tighten. He understood what she was really saying, that she was lonely, that her independence had cost her the ability to connect with anyone, that success hadn't filled the emptiness her parents had left behind. He understood because he felt the same thing. I should finish, he said quietly. Right, of course. He completed the rest of his work in silence, but it didn't feel hostile, just careful, like both of them were trying to figure out where the boundaries were and whether crossing them would destroy everything or create something better. When Adrian was done, he pushed his cart toward the door. Adrian? He stopped. Would you want to have coffee sometime? Claire asked. Not here. Somewhere public. Just 2 people talking. No complications. Every instinct Adrian had screamed at him to say no, to maintain the distance, to protect himself and Ella from the risk of getting involved with someone who lived in a completely different world. But when he opened his mouth, what came out was, when? Saturday afternoon? I know you work nights, but if you have a few hours, I can't Saturday. I have Ella. Bring her. Adrian stared at her. You want to have coffee with me and my 4-year-old daughter? Why not? I've never actually spent time with a child. It might be interesting. It might be a disaster. Then it'll be a memorable disaster. Claire's expression was completely serious. I'm not asking you on a date, Adrian. I'm asking if we can be friends. Real friends. The kind who know things about each other beyond work schedules and corporate hierarchies. People will talk. Let them. I'm tired of living my life based on what people might say. Easy for you to say. You're the CEO. I'm the guy who cleans your floor. So we'll meet somewhere far from this building, somewhere no one from work will see us. There's a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Small place, quiet. I'll meet you there Saturday at 2. This is a bad idea. Probably. Are you going to come anyway? Adrian thought about Ella's drawing on his refrigerator. 2 stick figures. Nobody else. He thought about the walls he'd built and whether they were protecting his daughter or just teaching her that the world was too dangerous to trust. Yeah, he said finally. I'll come. Claire's smile was small and real and made her look 5 years younger. Good. I'll see you Saturday. Adrian left before he could change his mind. Saturday afternoon, he stood outside the coffee shop in Lincoln Park with Ella's hand in his, questioning every decision that had led him to this moment. The place was exactly like Claire had described. Small, quiet. The kind of neighborhood spot that served overpriced lattes and had mismatched furniture. Through the window, he could see Claire sitting at a corner table wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual suit. She looked different, more human. "Is this where we're having hot chocolate?" Ella asked. "Yeah, baby. You remember what we talked about?" "Be polite. Use my inside voice. Don't ask the lady why her face looks like that." Adrian winced. "She's pretty, Ella. Her face looks normal." "Then why can't I ask about it?" "Because it's rude to comment on how people look." "But you said she's pretty. That's commenting. That's different." "Why?" "Because—" Adrian stopped. "Just don't mention her face, okay?" "Okay, Daddy." He pushed open the door and immediately second-guessed everything. This was insane. He was about to have coffee with the CEO of the company where he worked maintenance. He'd brought his 4-year-old daughter. Someone was definitely going to see them. Word would get back to the building, and by Monday morning everyone would assume he was sleeping with his boss. But Claire had already spotted them. She stood up, and her expression when she saw Ella was something Adrian couldn't quite read. "You must be Ella," Claire said, crouching down to Ella's level. "I'm Claire." Ella studied her with the brutal honesty of a 4-year-old. "You're really tall." "I am." "And you have pretty earrings." "Thank you. Can I touch them?" "Ella," Adrian said quickly. "Personal space." But Claire laughed. "It's okay. They're just pearls." She leaned closer so Ella could see them better. "My grandmother gave them to me." "I don't have a grandmother." "No?" "Nope, just Daddy." Claire glanced up at Adrian, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the shared knowledge of what it meant to build a family from whatever pieces you had left. "Well," Claire said to Ella, "your daddy seems pretty great. I think you're lucky." "I know. He reads me stories every night, even when he's really sleepy." "That's because he loves you very much." "I love him too, more than anything, except maybe pancakes." Claire laughed again, a real laugh, and Adrian felt something in his chest unclench. Maybe this wasn't going to be a complete disaster after all. They ordered drinks, coffee for Claire and Adrian, hot chocolate with extra whipped cream for Ella. They sat at the corner table, and for the first few minutes Ella dominated the conversation, telling Claire about her favorite cartoons and her stuffed rabbit and how she could count all the way to 20. Claire listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, asking questions, responding to Ella's non-sequiturs with patience Adrian hadn't expected. "Do you have any kids?" Ella asked. "No, I don't." "Why not?" "Ella," Adrian warned. "It's okay." Claire stirred her coffee. "I never really thought about having children. I was always too busy with work." "That's sad." "Is it?" "Yeah, kids are fun. Right, Daddy?" "Right, baby." Ella slurped her hot chocolate, leaving a whipped cream mustache on her upper lip. "You should come to the park with us sometime. We go every Sunday. Daddy pushes me on the swings really high." "I bet he does." "He's strong. He can lift me way up." Ella held her arms above her head to demonstrate. "All the way to the sky." Claire looked at Adrian over Ella's head, and there was something soft in her expression, something that made him uncomfortable in a way he couldn't name. "Your daughter is wonderful," Claire said quietly. "Thanks. She's pretty great when she's not negotiating for extra screen time." "I heard that," Ella said, "and I'm always great. My mistake." They stayed for over an hour. Ella eventually got bored with the adult conversation and pulled a coloring book from Adrian's bag, settling into her own world of crayons and princess drawings. That left Adrian and Claire to actually talk. "This feels weird," Adrian admitted. "Why?" "Because 3 weeks ago you were the CEO I avoided eye contact with. Now we're having coffee and my daughter just told you about her digestive issues. She has strong opinions about fiber. She has strong opinions about everything." Adrian took a sip of his coffee. "I still don't understand why you want to be friends with me. I told you, you're real. There are lots of real people in Chicago. Most of them don't work overnight maintenance." Claire was quiet for a moment, tracing the rim of her cup with one finger. "When I was younger, I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, built something impressive enough, I'd feel successful. And I do. I look at the company, at what we've accomplished, and I know I should be proud." She looked up at him. "But I go home to an empty apartment every night and eat takeout alone and wonder what the point of any of it is. Success doesn't keep you warm. It doesn't care if you're lonely. It doesn't ask how your day was. So get a cat. She laughed, surprised. A cat? Yeah, low maintenance, independent, probably fits your lifestyle better than a person. You think I'm too difficult for human companionship? I think you're used to being in control of everything, and people are messy and unpredictable and don't follow logical patterns. That's actually very accurate. I know. I'm the same way. I've spent 3 years organizing my entire life around predictability because chaos terrifies me. But you know what I'm learning? What? Chaos is just another word for being alive. You can't control everything. You can't plan for every contingency. Sometimes you just have to let things be messy and hope it works out. Claire studied him with those dark, calculating eyes. Is that what this is? You letting things be messy? Apparently. How does it feel? Terrifying. Good. I'd be worried if you said it was easy. Ella looked up from her coloring. Daddy, I have to go potty. Okay, baby, come on. He took her to the bathroom, and when they came back, Claire had ordered another round of drinks and a cookie the size of Ella's head. You didn't have to do that, Adrian said. I wanted to. She's been very patient sitting here while the adults talk about boring things. Ella's eyes lit up when she saw the cookie. Can I really have all of it? If your dad says it's okay. Ella turned to Adrian with pleading eyes. He sighed. Half now, half later. Deal. She attacked the cookie with 4-year-old enthusiasm while Adrian and Claire continued talking. They covered safer topics, books, movies, the Chicago weather. But underneath the casual conversation, Adrian could feel something building, an understanding, a connection that went beyond their completely different lives. Can I ask you something personal? Claire said eventually. Depends on the question. Do you ever regret it? Taking on single parenthood? Giving up whatever life you might have had otherwise? Adrian watched Ella, who'd gotten chocolate all over her face and was humming tunelessly to herself every single day. He said, honestly, I regret that her mother left. I regret that Ella has to grow up with only one parent. I regret that I can't give her the kind of childhood I had, with 2 parents and a stable home and no stress about money. He paused. But I don't regret her. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, even when she's screaming at 2 a.m. because her stuffed rabbit is in the wrong position. Being her father is the only thing I've ever done that actually matters. Claire's eyes were bright. You're a good man, Adrian. I'm just a guy trying not to screw up his kid. That's what makes you good. They left the coffee shop an hour later. Outside on the sidewalk, Ella held Adrian's hand and waved at Claire with her free hand. Bye, Claire. Thanks for the cookie. You're welcome, Ella. It was nice meeting you. You too. You should come to the park with us. Sunday. Daddy will push you on the swings. Adrian felt his face heat. Ella, but Claire was smiling. Maybe someday. I'd like that. Ella beamed, then she tugged on Adrian's hand. Daddy, I need to tell you a secret. He crouched down. She cupped her hands around his ear and whispered loud enough for Claire to definitely hear. I like her. She's nice and pretty. You should marry her. Adrian closed his eyes. Ella, we talked about this. About what? About saying things that are private thoughts. But it's true. That doesn't mean you say it out loud. Claire was trying very hard not to laugh. It's okay, Adrian. I'm flattered. You don't have to be polite. I'm sorry. She doesn't have a filter. Most 4-year-olds don't. It's part of their charm. Claire looked at Ella. Thank you for the compliment. You're very sweet. Ella grinned. I know. Adrian stood up, still mortified. We should go. It's almost her nap time. Of course. Claire met his eyes. Thank you for coming, for trusting me with this. Yeah, thanks for the coffee. Can we do it again? Adrian knew he should say no, knew every additional time they met was another risk, another potential complication. But Ella was already nodding enthusiastically, and Claire was looking at him with something like hope, and he realized he didn't want to say no. Yeah, he said, we can do it again. They said goodbye and headed in opposite directions. Adrian carried Ella on his shoulders because she claimed her legs were tired, and she sang nonsense songs the whole walk back to the car. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "I really like Claire. She listened when I talked, not like other grown-ups who just pretend." "I noticed." "Can she be our friend?" "Maybe. We'll see." "I hope so. I think you need more friends. You're always just with me." "You're my favorite person to be with." "I know. But maybe you could have other people too, like Claire. She seems lonely. Like you." Adrian stopped walking. "What makes you think I'm lonely?" "Sometimes at night I hear you in the kitchen and you sound sad, like you're trying not to cry." The observation hit him like a punch. He'd thought he was being quiet, thought Ella was asleep, thought he was protecting her from seeing how hard it all was. "I'm okay, baby, I promise." "I know, but maybe if you had friends, you'd be more than okay. You'd be happy." Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he just kissed the top of her head and kept walking. That night, after Ella was asleep, Adrian sat at the kitchen table with his phone in his hand. Claire had given him her personal number before they'd left the coffee shop, writing it on a napkin with the same precise handwriting as her note. "In case you need anything, or just want to talk." He stared at the number for 15 minutes before finally typing a message. "Thanks for today. Ella hasn't stopped talking about you." The response came within seconds. "She's incredible. You're doing an amazing job with her. I'm trying. Most days I have no idea what I'm doing. That's called parenting. Or so I'm told." Adrian smiled despite himself. "What are you doing right now?" "Working." "What else?" "It's Saturday night. I'm aware. You should do something fun. Take a break. I don't really know how to do fun anymore." "That's sad." "So I've been told." Adrian hesitated, then typed, "Next time we have coffee, leave your laptop at home. I'll teach you how normal people spend a Saturday." "That sounds dangerous." "Probably." "Are you going to do it anyway?" "Yes." Adrian set his phone down, feeling something unfamiliar in his chest, something lighter than the constant weight of worry and exhaustion, something that felt almost like hope. He told himself it was just friendship, just two lonely people finding a little bit of connection in a city that didn't care whether they existed. But late that night, lying in bed unable to sleep, he admitted the truth to himself. He liked her. He liked Claire Whitmore, CEO, billionaire, the woman who lived in a completely different world and probably saw him as a charity case or a curiosity or both. He liked the way she'd crouched down to talk to Ella, the way she'd listened with genuine interest instead of polite tolerance, the way she'd looked at him like he was more than just the maintenance guy who cleaned her office. And that terrified him more than anything, because liking someone meant wanting things. And wanting things meant risking the careful stability he'd built for Ella. It meant opening himself up to the possibility of loss all over again. But maybe, Adrian thought as sleep finally started to pull him under, maybe some risks were worth taking. Maybe Ella was right. Maybe he needed more than just survival. Maybe he needed to be happy too. The thought followed him into dreams, where the world was simpler and wanting something didn't automatically mean losing it. The whispers started on a Tuesday. Adrian noticed them first in the break room during his dinner hour, which fell at 1 a.m. for the overnight crew. 2 other maintenance workers sat at the corner table, talking in low voices that cut off the moment he walked in. "Brooks," one of them said, nodding. "Too casual. Too deliberate." Adrian grabbed his sandwich from the fridge and sat at the opposite end of the room, pretending to check his phone while his stomach nodded. He'd been careful. He and Claire had met for coffee 3 more times over the past 2 weeks, always in different neighborhoods, always far from downtown. They texted occasionally. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that crossed any line. But apparently it hadn't been careful enough. When he left the break room, he heard one of the men say, "I'm telling you, man, something's going on. Marcus saw them together at that place in Wicker Park." Adrian's jaw tightened. He kept walking. By Thursday, the whispers had spread. He felt eyes following him as he moved through the building, heard conversations stop when he entered a room. One of the older janitors, a woman named Diane who'd always been friendly, looked at him with something like pity. "You be careful, honey," she said quietly when they passed in the hallway. "People talk, and talk can get ugly." "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." She touched his arm gently. I'm not judging, just saying, be careful. That night, Adrian worked the 23rd floor with his shoulders tight and his mind racing. He'd known this would happen eventually, had warned Claire it would happen, but knowing something intellectually and experiencing it were completely different things. He was emptying trash in the conference room when his supervisor appeared in the doorway. "Brooks, my office. Now." Adrian's stomach dropped. "I'm in the middle of now." He followed Rick down to the facilities office on the second floor, trying to prepare himself for whatever was coming. Termination, suspension, a formal warning. He ran through his options, his backup plans, the math of how long he could last on his savings before he'd have to beg for his job back. Rick closed the door and sat behind his desk, arms crossed. "Want to tell me what's going on?" "Nothing's going on. Cut the crap. I've been getting calls, questions. People want to know why my guy is spending time with the CEO outside of work." Adrian met his eyes. "I'm not breaking any rules. You're creating a distraction. By having coffee with someone? By having coffee with your boss's boss's boss. You don't see how that's a problem? She's not my boss. I don't report to her. I don't work directly with her department. We're not violating any fraternization policies." "Policies aren't the issue here." Rick leaned forward. "The issue is perception. The issue is that people think you're getting special treatment, that you're trying to sleep your way into a better position." The words hit like a slap. "That's not... I don't care if it's true or not. I care that it's what people are saying. And when people say things like that, it affects morale. It affects team dynamics. It affects my ability to manage my staff." Adrian fought to keep his voice level. "What do you want me to do?" "Stop seeing her. Keep your head down. Do your job. Let this blow over. And if I don't?" Rick's expression hardened. "Then I can't protect you. Someone's going to file a complaint. HR's going to get involved. And when they start investigating, even if you haven't done anything wrong, the scrutiny alone will make your life hell." "So I'm supposed to end a friendship because people are gossiping?" "You're supposed to use your brain. You've got a kid to support. You think this job grows on trees? You think you can just walk into another position making what you make here, with your schedule, with your benefits?" Rick shook his head. "I like you, Brooks. You're a good worker. But you're playing a game you can't win. That woman lives in a different world, and when this all goes sideways, she'll be fine. You won't." Adrian sat there, feeling the walls closing in. Everything Rick said was true. He knew it was true, had known it from the beginning. But the thought of cutting Claire out of his life made something in his chest ache. "Is that all?" he asked quietly. "That's all. Think about what I said." Adrian went back to work, his mind spinning. He finished the 23rd floor on autopilot, his body moving through the familiar routine while his thoughts spiraled. The corner office was dark. Claire wasn't there. Part of him was relieved. Part of him felt the absence like a physical thing. He was packing up his cart when his phone buzzed. "Working late tonight. Want to grab breakfast after your shift? There's a diner near your place. Opens at 6. Adrian stared at the message. The smart thing would be to say no. To create distance. To protect himself and Ella from the inevitable fallout. Instead, he typed, "Yeah, I'll be there." The diner was one of those 24-hour places that smelled like coffee and grease and had vinyl booths that stuck to your skin. Claire was already there when Adrian arrived at 6:15, sitting in a corner booth with a newspaper and a cup of coffee that looked untouched. She'd dressed down, jeans, a simple sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail. Without the armor of her business suits, she looked younger, more approachable, more human. "Hey," she said when he slid into the booth across from her. "You look tired. I worked all night." "Right, sorry. Stupid observation." She pushed a menu toward him. "Order whatever you want. It's on me." "You don't have to do that." "I know. I want to." A waitress appeared, and Adrian ordered eggs and toast because it was cheap, and he was too tired to think about what he actually wanted. Claire ordered the same. "So?" Claire said after the waitress left. "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" Adrian wrapped his hands around his water glass. "People are talking." "I know." "You know?" "My assistant mentioned it. Apparently the rumor mill at our company is very efficient." Claire's expression didn't change. Does it bother you? Does it bother me that people think I'm trying to sleep with my boss for career advancement? Yeah, it bothers me. I'm not your boss. That's what I told my supervisor. He didn't seem to care about the technicality. Claire went very still. Your supervisor talked to you about this? Last night, told me I was creating a distraction, that I should stop seeing you and let it blow over. What did you say? Nothing. What could I say? He's right. No, he's not. Claire. Adrian leaned forward. I told you from the beginning this was a bad idea, that people would make assumptions, that it could cost me my job. It's not going to cost you your job. I won't let it. You can't control everything. Watch me. The fierceness in her voice caught him off guard. She wasn't backing down, wasn't suggesting they be more careful or create more distance. She looked angry. This is exactly what I was talking about, Claire said. People can't stand the idea that I might have a genuine friendship with someone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of acceptable. They can't imagine that I might value your company more than some vice presidents, so they turn it into something ugly. Because it looks ugly. CEO spending time with maintenance worker. You don't see how that creates problems? The only problem I see is people who can't mind their own business. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who will get fired. Neither are you. I'll talk to HR. I'll make it clear that our friendship is completely appropriate, and anyone who has a problem with it can take it up with me directly. Adrian shook his head. That'll make it worse. That'll make it look like I have special protection, like you're playing favorites. So what do you want me to do? Pretend we don't know each other? Cross the street when I see you? Treat you like you're invisible? Yes, that's exactly what I want you to do. The words hung between them, heavy and final. Claire's expression crumbled, just for a second, before she pulled it back together. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. Is that really what you want? Or is that what you think you should want? Adrian closed his eyes. I don't know anymore. Then let me make it simple. I don't have many friends, Adrian. I don't have many people in my life who make me feel like a person instead of a position. You do that. You and Ella. And I'm not willing to give that up because some people want to make it into something it's not. It's not about what you're willing to give up. It's about what I can afford to risk. So risk it. I have a daughter. I know. She depends on me. She has no one else. If I lose this job, if I can't pay rent, if everything falls apart, his voice cracked. I can't take that chance. Not even for friendship. The waitress returned with their food. They both sat in silence as she set down plates and refilled coffee and asked if they needed anything else. Claire said no. The waitress left. Neither of them touched their food. I understand, Claire said finally. I don't like it, but I understand. I'm sorry. Don't be. You're protecting your daughter. That's what good fathers do. She picked up her fork, set it down again. Can I ask you one thing? Sure. If the circumstances were different, if you didn't have to worry about your job or what people thought or any of it, would you want to be friends with me? Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who'd sat on the floor of her office and talked about loneliness, who'd listened to Ella's endless chatter with genuine interest, who'd made him feel less alone in a way he hadn't realized he needed. Yeah, he said quietly. I would. Then that's enough. What do you mean? Claire pulled a business card from her wallet and wrote something on the back. She slid it across the table. This is my personal email, not my work email. If you ever need anything, if anything happens with your job or your daughter or anything at all, you contact me directly and I'll help. Claire, I'm not asking you to use it. I'm not asking you to keep seeing me or texting me or any of it. I'm just saying that if you need help, I'm here because that's what friends do, even if they can't actually be friends. Adrian took the card, his throat tight. Thank you. You're welcome. She stood up, pulled cash from her wallet, and left it on the table. More than enough to cover both meals. Take care of yourself, Adrian, and take care of Ella. She left before he could respond. Adrian sat in the booth alone, staring at his untouched eggs, feeling like he'd just made a terrible mistake, but not knowing what else he could have done. He went home. Slept for 4 hours. Woke up when Ella jumped on his bed and demanded pancakes. Life continued. For 2 weeks, Adrian didn't see Claire. He worked his shifts, avoided the 23rd floor when possible, and focused on being present for Ella. The whispers at work gradually died down. Rick stopped giving him warning looks. Everything went back to normal. Except nothing felt normal anymore. Adrian found himself thinking about Claire at odd moments, wondering what she was doing, whether she was working late, whether she was eating alone in that massive office. He'd catch himself reaching for his phone to text her something Ella had said, then remember he couldn't do that anymore. The loneliness he'd lived with for 3 years suddenly felt sharper, more obvious, like someone had opened a door to show him what life could be like, and then slammed it shut again. Ella noticed. "You're sad again," she said one night while he was tucking her in. "I'm just tired, baby." "No, you're sad, like you were before Claire." Adrian sat on the edge of her bed. "What do you mean, before Claire?" "Before we had coffee with her, you were always sad. Then when we saw her, you smiled more. Now you're sad again." Ella's eyes were serious. "Did you have a fight?" "Sort of. Grown-up stuff." "Can you say sorry?" "It's more complicated than that." "Why do grown-ups always make things complicated? Just say sorry and be friends again." Adrian smoothed her hair back. "I wish it was that easy." "It is that easy. You're just scared." The observation hit harder than it should have. She was 4 years old. She shouldn't be that perceptive. "Maybe you're right," Adrian admitted. "I'm always right. That's what you tell me." "When did I say that?" "When I said vegetables are yucky and you said I was wrong." "That's different." "No, it's not," Ella yawned. "You should call Claire. Tell her you miss her. She probably misses you too." "How do you know?" "Because she looked at you the way you look at me when you think I'm sleeping." Adrian frowned. "What way is that?" "Like you love me very much, and you're worried something bad will happen." Ella's eyes were already drifting closed. "That's how Claire looks at you." Adrian sat with that observation long after Ella fell asleep. He told himself she was wrong, that she was 4 and didn't understand the difference between adult friendship and love, that she was projecting her own need for family onto a situation that was complicated and fraught with risk. But late that night, lying in bed, he pulled out his phone and stared at Claire's contact information. He typed a message, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, he just wrote, "How are you?" The response came immediately, like she'd been waiting. "Lonely. You? Same. I miss talking to you." Adrian's chest ached. "I miss it too." Is it still too risky? He thought about Rick's warning, about the whispers that had finally died down, about Ella depending on him to keep their lives stable. Then he thought about Claire sitting alone in her office at midnight, about Ella saying he was sad, about the walls he'd built that kept everyone out, even the people who might actually care. "Probably," he typed. "But I don't care anymore." "You sure?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." "That's very brave. Or very stupid. Maybe both." Adrian smiled despite himself. "Coffee tomorrow? That place in Lincoln Park again?" "I can't tomorrow. Board meeting until 6. But I'm free Saturday afternoon. Want to do something with Ella?" "Like what?" "I don't know. What do 4-year-olds do for fun?" Adrian thought about it. "There's a children's museum. She loves it. We could meet there." "Perfect. Text me the address." "Claire?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for not giving up on this. Thank you for coming back." Adrian set his phone down, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He knew this was still risky. Knew people would start talking again. Knew Rick would probably pull him aside for another lecture. But for the first time in 3 years, he was choosing something for himself instead of just surviving. And that felt worth the risk. Saturday at the Children's Museum was chaos in the best possible way. Ella dragged them from exhibit to exhibit, explaining the mechanics of every interactive display with the confidence of someone who'd visited at least 20 times. Claire listened with the same focused attention she probably brought to board meetings, asking questions, letting Ella teach her how to build structures with giant foam blocks. Adrian watched them together and felt something shift in his chest. Claire had no idea how to interact with a 4-year-old, but she was trying, really trying, not because she had to, Not because it served some purpose, just because she cared. "Look, Claire, this is the water table," Ella announced, pulling her toward a large basin where kids were playing with pumps and dams. "You can make rivers and waterfalls and everything." "Show me how it works," Ella demonstrated with the seriousness of a professor, and Claire followed her instructions exactly. Within minutes, they were both soaked, water splashed across their shirts, and Claire was laughing like Adrian had never heard her laugh before. "I think we're supposed to keep the water in the table," Adrian observed. "Too late for that." Claire grinned at him, her hair coming loose from its ponytail, her expensive sweater completely ruined. She looked happy. Actually happy. After the museum, they walked to a nearby park. Ella ran ahead to the playground while Adrian and Claire sat on a bench, watching her climb on equipment that seemed designed specifically to give parents heart attacks. "She's fearless," Claire said. "Too fearless. Last week she tried to jump off the top of the slide." "What did you do?" "Had a minor heart attack and then explained gravity. Not sure which one made more impact." Claire laughed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just watching Ella play. "Can I tell you something?" Claire said eventually. "Sure." "This is the most fun I've had in years. Maybe ever." Adrian looked at her. "Watching a 4-year-old play on a playground?" "Being with people who actually like having me around, who don't want anything from me except my company." She pulled her knees up to her chest, looking younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. "Do you know how rare that is in my life?" "I can imagine." "No, you can't. You have Ella. You have someone who loves you unconditionally, who needs you. I have employees and board members and people who smile at me because I sign their paychecks." She rested her chin on her knees. "Sometimes I think about what my life would look like if I'd made different choices, if I'd focused on people instead of success. But then I remember that I don't actually know how to do that, how to be with people, how to let them in. You're letting us in. Am I? Or am I just practicing being normal so I can go back to my real life and pretend this never happened?" The question was so raw, so honest, that Adrian didn't know how to respond. "You want my opinion?" he said finally. "Always. I think you're scared. I think you've built this entire life around being in control and never needing anyone, and the idea that you might actually want human connection terrifies you, because wanting things means you can lose them." Claire was very quiet. "But here's the thing," Adrian continued. "You're already losing. You're losing years of your life to loneliness. You're losing the possibility of actually being happy instead of just successful. So yeah, maybe letting people in is risky. Maybe I'll disappoint you. Maybe this friendship will blow up in both our faces. But at least you'll have tried." "When did you become wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being scared all the time." "Me too." Ella ran over. Her face flushed from playing. "Daddy, can Claire come to dinner with us? Please." Adrian looked at Claire. "We're just going to get pizza. Nothing fancy." "I'd love to." "Really?" "Really." So they got pizza at a tiny place near Adrian's apartment, sitting in a booth that was too small for 3 people while Ella told stories that had no beginning, middle, or end. Claire ate cheap pizza like it was a 5-star meal and didn't complain when Ella accidentally knocked over her water. Afterward, walking back to Adrian's building because Claire had insisted on walking them home, Ella held both their hands and swung between them. "This is nice," she announced. "What is?" Adrian asked. "Having 3 people. Before it was just 2. Now it's 3. 3 is better." Claire glanced at Adrian over Ella's head, and something passed between them. An understanding, an acknowledgement that this, whatever this was, had become something more than just friendship. They reached Adrian's building. Ella was practically asleep on her feet. "I should get her upstairs," Adrian said. "Of course." Claire crouched down to Ella's level. "Thank you for showing me the museum today. I had a wonderful time." Ella wrapped her arms around Claire's neck in a sudden, fierce hug. "You should come over more. We could watch movies and make popcorn, and you could stay for breakfast." "I'd like that very much." "Promise?" "Promise." Ella released her and took Adrian's hand, yawning. "Bye, Claire." "Bye, sweetheart." Adrian carried Ella into the building, but before the door closed, he turned back. Claire was still standing on the sidewalk, watching them go with an expression that made his chest ache. She looked like someone who'd just been given something she didn't know how to keep. Upstairs, Adrian got Ella ready for bed in record time. She was asleep before he finished the first bedtime story. His phone buzzed. "Thank you for today, for letting me into your life. I know it's not easy. You're welcome. Ella really likes you." "Just Ella?" Adrian stared at the message, his heart pounding. This was the moment where he could deflect or joke or pretend he didn't understand what she was really asking. Instead, he typed, "No, not just Ella. Good. Because I really like you too. Both of you. This is probably a mistake. Probably. But I'm tired of playing it safe. Me too. So what do we do now?" Claire's response took longer this time. When it came, it was simple and terrifying and exactly what Adrian needed to hear. "We figure it out together." Adrian set his phone down and sat in the quiet of his apartment, listening to Ella breathe in the next room, thinking about the woman who'd somehow broken through every wall he'd spent 3 years building. He didn't know how this would end, didn't know if they could make it work, didn't know if the risks were worth the reward. But for the first time since Ella's mother had left that note on the kitchen counter, Adrian felt like maybe, possibly, he didn't have to do everything alone. And that feeling, fragile and new and terrifying as it was, felt like the beginning of something worth protecting. The message from HR came on a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after that day at the museum. Adrian had just gotten home from his shift, exhausted and looking forward to sleeping for a few hours before Ella woke up. He saw the email notification on his phone, and his stomach dropped before he even opened it. "Mr. Brooks, please report to Human Resources at 2 p.m. today regarding a personnel matter. This meeting is mandatory. Failure to attend may result in disciplinary action." He read it twice, his hands going cold. Personnel matter. That could mean anything, but Adrian knew exactly what it meant. Someone had filed a complaint. He called Mrs. Chen and asked if she could pick Ella up from preschool and keep her for a few extra hours. Then he showered, put on his cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt, and tried to prepare himself for whatever was coming. The HR office was on the 4th floor, in a section of the building Adrian rarely entered. Everything was too clean, too polished, too corporate. He checked in with the receptionist and was told to wait. 20 minutes later, a woman in her 40s emerged from one of the conference rooms. "Mr. Brooks, I'm Patricia Chen, Director of Human Resources. Please come with me." The conference room had glass walls and a long table. 2 people were already seated. One was a man Adrian didn't recognize, wearing a suit and the kind of neutral expression that suggested he was legal counsel. The other was Rick, his supervisor, looking uncomfortable. "Please sit down," Patricia said, gesturing to a chair. Adrian sat. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Patricia opened a folder. "Mr. Brooks, we've received a formal complaint regarding your conduct. Specifically, allegations that you've been engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a member of executive leadership." "Who filed the complaint?" "That information is confidential. What I can tell you is that multiple employees have reported seeing you with Ms. Claire Whitmore in non-work settings, coffee shops, restaurants, public parks." She looked up at him. "Is that accurate?" Adrian chose his words carefully. "I've had coffee with Ms. Whitmore a few times. We're friends." "Friends." "Yes. And you don't see how that's problematic? A maintenance worker developing a personal friendship with the CEO? There's nothing in the company handbook that prohibits employees from socializing outside of work." The lawyer spoke up. "The handbook explicitly states that relationships between employees of significantly different organizational levels must be disclosed to HR to prevent conflicts of interest. We're not in a relationship. You just said you're friends. Friendship isn't a romantic relationship." Patricia leaned forward. "Mr. Brooks, let me be direct. The concern here isn't just about policy. It's about the appearance of impropriety. It's about other employees feeling that you're receiving preferential treatment. It's about protecting both you and Ms. Whitmore from allegations that could damage both your positions." "What allegations? We haven't done anything wrong." "That may be true, but perception matters. And the perception right now is that your friendship with Ms. Whitmore is inappropriate and potentially damaging to company morale." Adrian felt anger rising in his chest. So I'm being punished for having a friend? You're not being punished. We're having a conversation. Feels like punishment. Rick finally spoke up. Adrian, just listen to what they're saying. I am listening. They're saying I can't have friends outside of work if those friends are too far above my pay grade. Patricia's expression hardened. We're saying that your friendship with Ms. Whitmore has created a situation that makes other employees uncomfortable. That creates liability for the company, and that needs to be addressed. How do you want to address it? We're offering you a transfer, different building, same pay, same hours. You'd start Monday. The words hit like a physical blow. You're moving me out of this building. We're offering you the opportunity to continue your employment in a location where your personal relationships won't create complications. And if I refuse? The lawyer spoke again. Then we'll need to conduct a full investigation into your relationship with Ms. Whitmore, interview witnesses, review security footage, examine any communications between you. That process could take weeks and would likely result in suspension without pay pending the outcome. Adrian understood what they were really saying. Take the transfer, or we'll make your life hell until you quit. Does Ms. Whitmore know about this meeting? He asked. Patricia hesitated. Ms. Whitmore has been informed that we're addressing employee concerns regarding workplace relationships. That's not what I asked. Ms. Whitmore's involvement in this matter is not appropriate given her position. So you're making decisions about my employment without consulting the person you claim I'm having an inappropriate relationship with. Mr. Brooks, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm trying to understand how this is fair. Fair or not, it's the reality of the situation. Patricia closed her folder. You have until Friday to decide. Transfer to the new location or face an investigation. Those are your options. Adrian stood up. Can I leave? Yes, we'll need your decision by end of business Friday. He left without looking at Rick. Made it to the elevator, down to the lobby, out to the parking garage before the full weight of it hit him. They were forcing him out, not firing him because that would be too obvious, but making it impossible for him to stay. And there was nothing he could do about it. He sat in his car and pulled out his phone. Stared at Claire's contact information. He should tell her, should let her know what was happening. But what would be the point? She couldn't fix this. If anything, her getting involved would make it worse. Instead, he drove home and tried to figure out what the hell he was going to do. The new building was in a suburb 40 minutes west of the city. Adrian drove out there that afternoon to look at it, trying to calculate the logistics. 40 minutes each way meant an extra hour and 20 minutes of commuting, which meant less sleep, which meant less time with Ella. And the neighborhood wasn't close to anything, no preschools nearby, no familiar parks or library or any of the places that made up their life. He'd have to move, uproot Ella from the only home she'd known, find new childcare, start over, all because he'd made the mistake of wanting something more than just survival. That night, after putting Ella to bed, Adrian sat at his kitchen table and tried to make a decision. The smart thing was to take the transfer, keep his job, keep his benefits, adapt. But the thought of it made him feel hollowed out. His phone rang. Claire. He let it ring 3 times before answering. Hey, he said. Adrian, I just heard what happened. I'm so sorry. You heard from HR? No, from my assistant. Apparently it's all over the building. Her voice was tight. They can't do this. I'm going to talk to Patricia tomorrow. I'm going to make this right. Don't. What? Don't get involved. That'll just make it worse. How could it possibly be worse? They're forcing you out because we're friends. That's discrimination. It's politics, and you getting involved will turn it into a bigger mess than it already is. So you're just going to accept this? Take the transfer and pretend everything's fine? I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. You can fight this. We can fight this together. Adrian closed his eyes. I can't afford to fight, Claire. I have a kid. I have rent. I have bills. Fighting means risking everything. And taking the transfer doesn't? At least I still have a job. In a building 40 minutes away. In a neighborhood where you'll have to move. Where Ella will have to leave her preschool and her friends and everything she knows. Claire's voice cracked. This is my fault. This is happening because of me. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. If I'd just left you alone, if I'd respected the boundaries you tried to set, I didn't want those boundaries, Adrian said quietly. I wanted exactly what we had. That's not on you. Claire was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. You have until Friday to decide? Yeah. Can I see you before you decide? Claire, please, just once more, let me at least say goodbye properly. Adrian knew he should say no, knew seeing her would make this harder, but he couldn't bring himself to refuse. Tomorrow night, after my shift, that diner again. I'll be there. They met at 6 in the morning, both of them looking exhausted. Claire had clearly been up all night, her eyes red-rimmed, her hair less perfect than usual. She slid into the booth across from him and just looked at him for a long moment. I hate this, she said finally. Me too. I keep thinking there has to be a solution, some way to fix it. There isn't. You know there isn't. So that's it? You take the transfer and we just stop seeing each other? Adrian wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. I don't know what else to do. You could quit, find another job. Where? Doing what? I'm 32 with a high school diploma and 3 years of maintenance experience. This job pays better than anything else I'm qualified for. I could help you. Get you interviews, recommendations. That would just prove everyone right, that I was using you for advancement. Who cares what they think? I care, because those people are the ones who decide whether I can feed my daughter. Claire looked down at her hands. What if I quit? Adrian stared at her. What? What if I stepped down as CEO, removed myself from the equation? Then there'd be no conflict. You're not quitting your job because of me. Why not? It's just a job. It's your entire life. It's everything you've built. And it's made me miserable. She looked up at him, her eyes bright. You asked me once if I liked my job. The truth is, I don't. I'm good at it. I'm successful at it. But I hate it. I hate the politics and the performance and the loneliness. The only time I've been happy in the last 5 years is when I'm with you and Ella. Claire, you can't make a decision like that based on a friendship that's a few months old. It's not just friendship, and you know it. The words hung between them, too honest and too terrifying to take back. Adrian's throat was tight. Don't. Don't what? Don't say things that make this harder than it already is. Why? What's the point of protecting ourselves anymore? We've already lost. We haven't lost anything because there was never anything to lose. We're just two people who had coffee a few times. That's all this was. You don't believe that. I have to believe that, because if I let myself believe it was more, then losing it will destroy me. And I can't be destroyed. I have a daughter who needs me functional. Claire's face crumpled. So that's it? You're just going to walk away? I'm going to do what I have to do to take care of my kid. Same thing I've always done. And what about taking care of yourself? Myself doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Claire reached across the table and grabbed his hand. You matter, Adrian. Your happiness matters. Your life matters. And I know you're scared and I know you're trying to protect Ella, but you can't spend the rest of your life sacrificing everything for her. That's not fair to her, and it's not fair to you. You don't get to tell me how to parent my daughter. The words came out harsher than he intended. Claire flinched and pulled her hand back. You're right. I'm sorry. They sat in painful silence. Adrian wanted to take it back, wanted to reach across the table and hold her hand and tell her he was scared and angry and didn't know what the right choice was anymore. But he didn't. He just sat there, building the walls back up brick by brick. I should go, Claire said finally. I have meetings. Yeah, I need to sleep. She stood up, then hesitated. Adrian? Yeah? Whatever you decide, I want you to know something. Meeting you changed my life, you and Ella. You made me feel like a person again instead of just a position. And I'm grateful for that, even if this is where it ends. Adrian couldn't look at her. Take care of yourself, Claire. You too. She left, and Adrian sat alone in the booth, staring at his cold coffee, feeling like he'd just made a terrible mistake, but not knowing what else he could have done. He went home. Tried to sleep. Failed. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Claire's face when he told her to leave. Around noon, Ella came home from preschool with Mrs. Chen. She climbed onto Adrian's bed and poked his shoulder. "Daddy, are you sick?" "No, baby, just tired." "You're always tired." She flopped down next to him. "Mrs. Chen says you have big adult problems." "Mrs. Chen talks too much." "Is it about Claire?" Adrian turned to look at her. "What makes you think that?" "Because you look the same way you looked when Mommy left, sad and scared." The observation hit him like a punch. "I'm not scared." "Yes, you are. You get quiet when you're scared, and you haven't talked in days." Adrian pulled her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "I might have to change jobs, Ella. We might have to move." She was quiet for a moment. "Because of Claire?" "Sort of." "Did she do something bad?" "No, she didn't do anything bad. People just think we're too different to be friends." "That's stupid." "Yeah, it is. I don't want to move. I like our house. I like my school. I like Mrs. Chen." "I know, baby. Can't you just tell the people they're wrong? It's not that simple." Ella sat up and looked at him with her serious face. "Daddy, you always tell me to be brave. You say being scared is okay, but letting scared make all your choices is bad. That's different. Why?" "Because I'm the adult. I have to make smart choices, not brave ones." "Why can't you make brave and smart choices?" Adrian didn't have an answer for that. That night, he lay awake thinking about what Ella had said, about brave versus smart, about the difference between protecting her and teaching her that the world was too dangerous to take any risks. He thought about Claire saying he mattered, about her offering to quit her job, about the look on her face when he told her this was just coffee between two people. And he realized he'd been lying to himself. This wasn't just friendship, hadn't been for a while. He'd developed real feelings for Claire Whitmore, and he'd been too terrified to admit it even to himself. But admitting it didn't change the situation, didn't make his job secure, or the gossip disappear, or the transfer offer go away. All it did was make everything hurt more. Thursday afternoon, Adrian was getting ready for his shift when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Brooks, this is Jennifer Reeves. I'm Claire Whitmore's executive assistant." Adrian's stomach tightened. "Is everything okay?" "Ms. Whitmore asked me to call you. She wanted you to know that she's scheduled a meeting with the board of directors tomorrow morning. She's going to address the situation regarding your employment." "She's doing what?" "She's going to formally request that the transfer be rescinded and that the HR investigation be closed." "Tell her not to do that." "I'm just delivering the message, Mr. Brooks." "Can you connect me to her?" "She's in meetings all day, but she wanted you to know that she's fighting for you. And she wanted me to tell you that she hopes you'll fight too." The line went dead. Adrian stood in his kitchen, his heart pounding. Claire was going to the board, was going to make this official, was going to attach her name and her reputation to defending a maintenance worker she'd had coffee with a few times. She was risking everything. For him. He grabbed his keys and drove to the office tower, even though it was the middle of the afternoon and he wasn't scheduled to work. Even though showing up unannounced was probably the worst possible idea. He had to stop her. The lobby receptionist looked confused when he walked in. "I need to see Claire Whitmore." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent. Tell her it's Adrian Brooks." The receptionist made a call, waited, then looked surprised. "She says to send you up." Adrian took the elevator to the 23rd floor, his mind racing. The assistant was waiting when the doors opened. "She's expecting you. Conference room B." He found Claire standing at the window of a glass-walled conference room, her back to the door. She didn't turn when he entered. "You can't go to the board?" Adrian said. "I already scheduled the meeting." "Cancel it." "No." "Claire, if you do this, you'll make yourself a target. They'll question your judgment. They'll say you're emotionally compromised. They'll use it against you. Let them." She finally turned to face him. "I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions." "That's my line." "I know. I stole it from your daughter." Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. She's too smart for her own good. She's brave, like her father. "I'm not brave. I'm terrified." "Brave and terrified aren't opposites, Adrian. They're the same thing." Being brave just means you do it anyway. Adrian crossed the room until he was standing in front of her. If you do this, you're risking your career. I know. For what? For me? I'm not worth that. Claire's eyes flashed. Don't you dare tell me what you're worth. Don't you dare stand there and act like you're less important than my career or this company or any of it. I'm a maintenance worker with a high school diploma. You're a man who raised a child by himself, who works overnight so she can have stability, who taught himself to be a father when no one showed him how. You're honest and kind, and you make me want to be a better person. Her voice broke. So don't tell me you're not worth fighting for. Adrian felt something crack open in his chest. All the walls he'd spent 3 years building, all the protective distance he'd maintained, all the lies he'd told himself about not needing anyone. It all fell away. I'm scared, he said quietly. Me too. I don't know how to do this, how to want something and not be terrified of losing it. Neither do I. But I think we figure it out together. People will talk. Let them. I could still lose my job. Then we'll figure that out too. I have a daughter who depends on me. I know. And I would never ask you to choose between her and me, but I'm asking you to consider that maybe she needs a father who's happy, not just one who's surviving. Adrian looked at Claire, really looked at her, at the woman who'd sat on the floor of an elevator and admitted she was lonely, who'd played in a water table with his daughter, who was willing to risk everything she'd built for the chance at something real. And he made a choice. Okay, he said. Okay, what? Okay, I'll fight. I'll tell HR I'm not taking the transfer. I'll deal with the investigation. I'll stop hiding. Claire's expression transformed. Really? Really, but I have one condition. What? You don't go to the board, not yet. Let me handle this my way first. And if your way doesn't work, then you can burn the whole building down for all I care. Claire laughed, and the sound was bright and genuine and full of relief. Deal. Before Adrian could overthink it, before he could talk himself out of it, he stepped forward and pulled Claire into his arms. She went rigid for half a second, surprised, and then she wrapped her arms around him and held on tight. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the glass-walled conference room where anyone could see, and Adrian realized this was what he'd been missing for 3 years. Not romance, not perfection, just someone who saw him and chose him anyway. I don't know what happens next, he said into her hair. Neither do I. But I want to find out. Me too. They pulled apart slowly. Claire's eyes were bright with tears she wasn't letting fall. You should get some sleep before your shift, she said. Yeah, I should. Adrian? Yeah? Thank you for being brave enough to try. Thank you for not giving up on me. He left before he could change his mind. Went home. Slept for 4 hours. Woke up when Ella jumped on his bed demanding dinner. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, Adrian felt something that wasn't just exhaustion or worry or fear. He felt hope. Friday morning, Adrian walked into Patricia Chen's office without an appointment and told her he was declining the transfer. She looked up from her computer, clearly surprised to see him. Mr. Brooks, we weren't expecting you until this afternoon. I know, but I wanted to give you my answer now. I'm not taking the transfer. Patricia set down her pen, her expression carefully neutral. I see. You understand that means we'll proceed with a full investigation? I understand, and I'm prepared to cooperate fully. I'll answer any questions you have. I'll provide any documentation you need, but I'm not leaving this building because people are gossiping about a friendship. It's more than gossip, Mr. Brooks. We have legitimate concerns about conflicts of interest. Then investigate. You'll find that Ms. Whitmore and I have never worked together professionally, that I've never received preferential treatment, that our friendship has nothing to do with my employment. Adrian kept his voice steady. What you will find is that we had coffee a few times and attended a children's museum. If that's grounds for termination, then go ahead and fire me. But don't pretend you're protecting the company. You're protecting a policy that says certain people aren't allowed to be friends with certain other people based on their job titles. Patricia studied him for a long moment. That's quite a speech. It's the truth. You're putting us in a difficult position. No, You're putting me in one. I'm just refusing to make it easy for you. We'll need to interview Ms. Whitmore as well. I'm sure she'll cooperate. Patricia sighed. This investigation could take weeks. During that time, there may be restrictions on your access to certain floors. You'll need to maintain professional boundaries with Ms. Whitmore. Any contact outside of work will need to be documented and disclosed. Fine. And if we find any evidence of impropriety, you won't, because there isn't any. We'll see. She made a note on her pad. You can return to your regular duties for now. We'll be in touch. Adrian left feeling like he'd just jumped off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. But at least he'd jumped. At least he'd stopped letting fear make every decision. He texted Claire on his way out of the building. Told HR I'm not taking the transfer. Investigation is moving forward. Her response came immediately. I'm proud of you. Don't be proud yet. I might have just gotten myself fired. You stood up for yourself. That's worth being proud of. How's your day? Exhausting. 3 board meetings. But I'm thinking about you. And Ella. That helps. Adrian smiled despite the anxiety churning in his stomach. She asked this morning if you could come to her school play next week. She's playing a flower. I would love to. Send me the details. You sure? It's at 2 in the afternoon, middle of your work day. I'll make it work. Adrian put his phone away and drove home feeling lighter than he had in days. Whatever happened with the investigation, at least he wasn't facing it alone anymore. The next week passed in a strange limbo. Adrian worked his shifts, avoiding the 23rd floors requested by HR. He saw Claire only once, briefly, when she came down to the 18th floor to personally thank the maintenance crew for their work during a recent emergency repair. Their eyes met across the hallway, and she gave him a small smile that made his chest ache. They texted constantly. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing that would cause problems if HR reviewed their messages. Just conversations about their days, about Ella, about the small, ordinary things that made up a life. Adrian learned that Claire hated mornings but loved sunsets. That she'd wanted to be a teacher when she was young, but her father had pushed her toward business. That she was allergic to shellfish and had never learned to ride a bike. Small details that made her feel more real, more human, more like someone he could actually build something with. And Claire learned about him too. About how he dropped out of college when Ella's mother got pregnant. About the years he'd spent working construction before switching to building maintenance for better hours. About his fear that he was failing Ella by not being able to give her more. Their conversations became the best part of Adrian's day. The thing he looked forward to during long shifts when his body ached and his eyes burned from exhaustion. Wednesday afternoon, he put on his cleanest shirt and drove to Ella's preschool for the spring play. Parents filled the small auditorium, phones out, ready to record every moment. Adrian found a seat in the middle section and saved the one next to him. 10 minutes before the play started, Claire slipped into the seat beside him. She was wearing a business suit, clearly having come straight from the office, but she'd brought flowers, a small bouquet of daisies. For after, she whispered. Every performer deserves flowers. Adrian's throat tightened. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. The lights dimmed, the play started. It was exactly as chaotic and adorable as every preschool production, with kids forgetting their lines and waving at parents and one child who decided to sit down in the middle of the stage and refused to move. Ella was a flower in the garden scene, wearing a costume that was mostly green construction paper and pipe cleaners. She didn't have any lines, but she took her role very seriously, swaying in place like a flower in the wind. When she spotted Claire in the audience, her whole face lit up. She waved enthusiastically, completely breaking character, and Claire waved back. After the play, they met Ella in the hallway. She ran to Claire first, which surprised Adrian and apparently surprised Claire too, because she looked momentarily uncertain about what to do before crouching down to Ella's level. You were wonderful, Claire said, presenting the flowers. The best flower I've ever seen. Ella took the daisies like they were made of gold. Really? Even better than real flowers? Much better. Real flowers can't wave at their friends. That's true. Ella turned to Adrian. Did you see me wave? I saw. You were great, baby. I know. Mrs. Rodriguez said I was a natural. She held Claire's hand and Adrian's hand, swinging between them as they walked toward the parking lot. Can Claire come to dinner again, please? Adrian looked at Claire. She might be busy. I'm not busy, Claire said quickly. I have work, but it can wait. You sure? Completely sure. So they went to the same pizza place, sitting in the same booth, and it felt both familiar and new at the same time. Comfortable in a way Adrian hadn't expected. Like maybe this could be normal. Like maybe they could build something real out of these small, ordinary moments. Ella dominated the conversation, telling Claire every detail about the play, about her friends, about the hamster in her classroom who kept escaping his cage. Claire listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Ella's stories. Watching them together, Adrian realized something that terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. He was falling in love with Claire Whitmore, not the CEO, not the polished professional who commanded boardrooms, but the woman who bought flowers for a 4-year-old's preschool play, who asked questions about escaped hamsters, who looked at his daughter like she was the most interesting person in the world. The realization should have scared him more than it did, should have sent him running back behind the walls he'd spent 3 years building. But instead, it felt right, like something inevitable that had been building since that first night in the elevator. After dinner, Claire walked them to Adrian's car. Ella was already half asleep, her head resting against Adrian's shoulder. "Thank you for coming today," Adrian said quietly. "It meant a lot to her, to both of us. But thank you for letting me be part of it." "Claire." "Yeah?" He wanted to tell her, wanted to say the words that were pressing against his chest, demanding to be spoken. But not here, not in a parking lot with his sleeping daughter between them. "Nothing. I'll text you later." She smiled, understanding somehow that there was more he wasn't saying. "I'll be waiting." 2 weeks into the investigation, HR called Adrian in for a formal interview. They asked him to detail every interaction he'd had with Claire, every coffee, every text message, every conversation. Adrian answered honestly. He had nothing to hide. Yes, they'd had coffee. Yes, they'd gone to the Children's Museum. Yes, they texted frequently. No, their relationship had never been romantic. No, Claire had never offered him any professional favors or advantages. The lawyers took notes. Patricia asked follow-up questions. It felt invasive and degrading, but Adrian kept his composure. "Have you ever been to Miss Whitmore's home?" one of the lawyers asked. "No." "Has she been to yours?" "No." "Have you ever exchanged gifts?" "She bought flowers for my daughter after a school play." "What about personal gifts between the two of you?" "No." The questions continued for over an hour. By the end, Adrian felt wrung out and exhausted. "Is that all?" he asked. "For now," Patricia said. "We'll be in touch if we need anything else." Adrian left and immediately called Claire. "How bad was it?" she asked. "Invasive, uncomfortable, but I told the truth. That's all I can do." "They interviewed me yesterday, asked the same questions." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That we're friends, that there's nothing inappropriate about our relationship, that if they have a problem with two adults having coffee, they need to re-examine their priorities." Adrian laughed despite himself. "You actually said that?" "I might have been slightly more diplomatic, but that was the gist. You're going to get us both fired. Good, we'll start a new company, one with sensible policies. I don't know anything about running a company. I'll teach you. We'll figure it out together." There was that phrase again, together, like it was a given, like Claire had already decided they were a team. And maybe they were. 3 days later, Adrian got an email from HR requesting a final meeting. His stomach dropped. This was it. Either he was keeping his job or losing it. He showed up at the appointed time, expecting the same conference room, the same lawyers, the same formal atmosphere. Instead, it was just Patricia, sitting in her office with a single folder in front of her. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Adrian sat, his heart pounding. Patricia opened the folder. "We've completed our investigation. After reviewing all available evidence, interviewing witnesses, and examining your employment record, we found no evidence of policy violations or inappropriate conduct." Adrian felt the tension drain from his shoulders. "So I'm cleared?" "Yes. You'll continue in your current position with no restrictions. The transfer offer is officially rescinded." She paused. "However, I want to be clear about something." While your friendship with Ms. Whitmore doesn't violate any policies, the perception of that friendship has created complications. Moving forward, we recommend that you maintain appropriate professional boundaries when on company property. Understood. And Mr. Brooks, off the record? Yeah? Patricia's expression softened slightly. I've been in HR for 20 years. I've seen a lot of inappropriate relationships, a lot of people using personal connections for professional gain. What you and Ms. Whitmore have doesn't look like that. It looks like two people who genuinely care about each other trying to navigate a complicated situation. She closed the folder. I hope you can make it work, but be careful. Not everyone will be as understanding as I'm trying to be. Thank you. I appreciate that. Adrian left the office feeling like he could breathe properly for the first time in weeks. He texted Claire immediately. Investigation's over. I'm cleared. No restrictions. Her response was just 3 words. Meet me tonight? Where? My place. I'll send you the address. Bring Ella if you want. Or come alone. Whatever you're comfortable with. Adrian stared at the message. She was inviting him to her home, crossing another boundary, making this real in a way it hadn't been before. He picked up Ella from preschool and drove to Mrs. Chen's apartment. Can you watch her tonight? He asked. Something came up. Mrs. Chen looked at him knowingly. The lady from the coffee shop? Yeah. Good. You go. Be happy. Ella will be fine with me. You sure? Very sure. She and I will make cookies and watch cartoons. You take your time. Adrian kissed Ella goodbye, promised he'd be back before bedtime, and drove to the address Claire had sent. It was a high-rise in one of the expensive neighborhoods near the lake, the kind of building with a doorman and marble floors and an elevator that moved so smoothly you barely felt it. Claire's apartment was on the top floor. She answered the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair down, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. Hi, she said. Hi. Come in. The apartment was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, minimalist furniture. Expensive art on the walls, but it felt empty somehow, like a hotel room someone had been living in but never quite made into a home. It's not much, Claire said, clearly nervous. I mean, it's too much, too big for one person, too impersonal. I keep meaning to make it feel more lived in, but I'm never here long enough to bother. It's nice. It's lonely. She turned to face him. Everything in my life is lonely, Adrian. This apartment, my office, my entire existence, until you and Ella. Claire, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me say it before you respond. Adrian nodded. Claire took a breath. I'm in love with you. I know that's terrifying and complicated and possibly the worst thing I could say given everything we've just been through. But I can't keep pretending this is just friendship. I think about you constantly. I miss you when you're not around. I want to be part of your life and Ella's life in every possible way. And I know I don't know how to do this. I've never been in a real relationship. I've never put someone else's needs before my own. But I want to learn. I want to try. With you. The words landed in the space between them, honest and vulnerable and impossible to take back. Adrian crossed the room and pulled Claire into his arms. I love you too, he said against her hair. I've been trying not to. Trying to convince myself this was temporary or surface level or just two lonely people finding comfort. But it's not. It's real. And it terrifies me. But I want it anyway. Claire pulled back just enough to look at him. What about Ella? What about her? I don't know how to be part of a family. I don't know how to be a mother figure or even a stable presence in a child's life. What if I'm terrible at it? You won't be terrible at it. You already care about her. That's the hardest part. What if she gets attached to me and then I screw it up and disappoint her? Then you'll apologize and try to do better. That's what parents do. We screw up constantly and then we try again. I'm scared, Adrian. Me too. But I think we do it anyway. Claire laughed, and it sounded like relief and fear and hope all mixed together. You keep saying that because it keeps being true. She kissed him then, and it felt like every wall they'd built between them finally coming down, like admitting the truth had made space for something real to grow. When they pulled apart, Claire was smiling. So what happens now? I don't know. We figure it out as we go. Together? Together. Over the next few months, they learned how to build something that made sense for their strange, complicated situation. Claire started leaving work earlier, joining Adrian and Ella for dinner twice a week. They went to the park on Sundays, all three of them, and Claire learned how to push a swing without sending Ella flying into orbit. It wasn't smooth. Claire had to learn that 4-year-olds didn't follow logical patterns, and that sometimes Ella's tantrums had no solution except patience and presence. Adrian had to learn how to let someone else in, how to share the responsibility of parenting instead of carrying it all alone. They fought sometimes, about schedules and priorities and the fundamental difference between their worlds. Claire couldn't always make it to Ella's events. Adrian couldn't always afford the things Claire suggested they do. They had to find a middle ground, a way of being together that respected both their realities. But they kept trying. 6 months after the investigation ended, Claire showed up at Adrian's apartment with boxes. "What's all this?" he asked. "I'm moving." Adrian's stomach dropped. "What? Where?" "Here, if you'll have me." "If you'll have? I know this place is tiny, and you probably think I'm crazy, but I don't want to live in that empty apartment anymore. I want to live somewhere that feels like home, somewhere with you and Ella." "Claire, this is a 1-bedroom. We barely fit as it is. So we'll get a bigger place, together. We'll find something that works for all of us." "That's a huge step." "I know. Too fast?" Adrian looked at the boxes, at Claire standing in his doorway, looking nervous and hopeful, at Ella peering around the corner, her eyes wide. "Is Claire moving in?" Ella asked. "Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" Ella ran to Claire and hugged her legs. "Yes. Then she can read me bedtime stories too, and we can have breakfast together and everything." Claire looked at Adrian over Ella's head. "Is that a yes?" "Yeah, that's a yes." They found a place 3 months later, a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood halfway between Adrian's old place and Claire's office. Not too big, not too small. Just right for 3 people learning how to be a family. Claire cut her hours at work, delegating more, learning that success didn't require sacrificing every personal moment. Adrian took a promotion to a day shift supervisor position, which paid better and meant he could actually be home for dinner. They weren't perfect. Ella still had nightmares. Claire still struggled with the messiness of domestic life. Adrian still worried about money and stability and whether he was doing enough. But they had each other. 1 year after that first conversation in the elevator, Adrian and Claire stood by the lake on a cold December evening with Ella between them. The city lights reflected on the water. Snow was starting to fall. "Ella, we need to ask you something," Claire said. Ella looked up, curious. "What?" "How would you feel if your daddy and I got married?" Ella's eyes went wide. "Really? Like a princess wedding?" "Like whatever kind of wedding you want," Adrian said. "Can I wear my princess dress?" "Absolutely. And can we have cake?" "So much cake." Ella threw her arms around both of them. "Yes, yes, 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 I want you to get married." Claire laughed, and Adrian pulled them both close, holding the 2 people who'd taught him that being seen wasn't something to fear. It was something to celebrate. They got married 2 months later in a small ceremony by the lake. Just a handful of people who actually mattered. Mrs. Chen, who cried through the entire ceremony. A few of Claire's colleagues who'd become genuine friends. Rick, Adrian's supervisor, who'd quietly become an ally. Ella stood between them, wearing her princess costume, holding a bouquet of daisies, beaming like she'd personally arranged the whole thing. The officiant asked them to share their vows. Claire went first. "Adrian, you taught me that strength isn't about never needing anyone. It's about being brave enough to let people in. You showed me what it means to build a life around love instead of achievement. And Ella, you taught me that family isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. I promise to keep showing up, for both of you, every single day." Adrian's voice was rough when he spoke. "Claire, for 3 years I lived like the world was too dangerous to trust. Like letting anyone close was a risk I couldn't afford. But you showed me that the real risk is living so carefully that you forget how to actually live. You and Ella are the best thing that ever happened to me. And I promise to never take that for granted." They exchanged rings, kissed while Ella cheered, walked back down the aisle as a family. At the small reception afterward, Claire pulled Adrian aside. "You know what the best part of all this is?" she said. "What?" I'm not lonely anymore. For the first time in my entire life, I'm not lonely. Me neither. Ella ran over and grabbed their hands. Come on, they're cutting the cake. They followed her laughing, and Adrian realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not without fear or worry or complications. Just real. Just three people who'd found each other against all odds and decided that together was better than alone. That night, after Ella was asleep and they were alone in their apartment, Claire curled up against Adrian on the couch. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. Taking the risk, fighting for this? Not for a second. Even though it was hard, even though people talked and you almost lost your job and we had to navigate all that messiness, especially because of that. The hard things are usually the ones worth doing. Claire was quiet for a moment. I used to think success meant achieving things, building things, accumulating power and respect and influence. But this feels like success too. Maybe more than anything else I've accomplished. What does? Being happy, being loved, being part of something that matters more than quarterly earnings. Adrian kissed the top of her head. You know what Ella said to me last week? What? She said she used to wish for a mommy every night before bed, and now she doesn't have to wish anymore because she has you. Claire's breath caught. She said that? Word for word. I'm going to cry. Go ahead. I won't judge. She did cry, quiet tears that soaked into his shirt, and Adrian held her while she let out years of loneliness and fear and the overwhelming relief of finally having something real. Later, lying in bed, Claire whispered into the darkness, Thank you. For what? For seeing me. Really seeing me. Not the CEO or the success story or any of it. Just me. That's all I ever saw. I know. That's why I fell in love with you. Adrian pulled her closer, feeling her warmth, her realness, the steady rhythm of her breathing. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago. Invisible, scared, convinced that survival was the best he could hope for. That man would barely recognize his life now. And that was okay, because the man he'd been was doing the best he could with what he knew, but the man he was becoming had learned something essential. That being seen didn't destroy your life. Sometimes it gave you a bigger, warmer, more complete one. Sometimes it gave you everything you'd been too afraid to want. And sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let yourself be loved.